Hey everybody! Alright, so we're talking about spell casting today. If you're planning on playing a spellcaster and Rolemaster, which I mean technically I guess everybody can be a spellcaster. But if you are planning on playing a spellcaster, this will be super important for you. I've created a new magician here, Makan. She's a fair elf, she's a magician, she's got some elemental spells, and I'm going to go over what all this junk means here in a minute, right? Okay. I've also got spell law pulled up, just because it's important. So the first thing you're going to want to know is when you put points into a spell list, right? So I've got fire law, light law, shield mastery. So I put ranks into it. And now I am using some options, so this is not necessarily the core rule, but I am using some optional rules. Kind of give spellcasters a bit of a boost because man, if you're running it just bone dry as is with no options, spellcasters really are not a fun class to play, I don't think, personally. But anyway, so you've got the spell list here and the ranks. Now the ranks on the spell list are the number of spells that you know off of that list. And let me show you a list real quick. So let's look at light law. All right. I've got light law at level 3, so I know projected light, shock bolt 1, and light 1. So these are the spells, area of effect, how long the spell lasts, the range. Now the types are kind of something important here. So we'll look at it. I gotta find it. But yeah, the spells themselves, spell basics. I bet it's under spell basics. No. I can never remember where this section is. But they use a lot of little codes, like E is an elemental spell. ED, that's under type. ED is an elemental attack spell or directed spell. And so for a type E spell, you're going to use a base spell attack roll or a base attack roll. It doesn't necessarily mean it's an attack per se. It just means that it's affecting something else. Or no, I may be wrong. That may be F that is that way. Hold on. Let me find this. I should have looked it up beforehand. Sorry, guys. My bad. I should have looked it up beforehand. I didn't. As you can see, there's a lot of information in here. Now, it's the spell list themselves. Okay. Where the heck? Is it magical basics? Spell gain rolls, casting requirements, PowerPoints, time to cast. Okay, maybe this is it. Now, that's just what the effects are. Okay. So there are multiple different types of spells. We'll start with this. There's defensive spells. Those are spells that are defensive, duh. And I believe they just have a type of D. Let me look at Shield Mastery. Yeah. And this is something else I want to show you too. You'll notice that Shield Mastery doesn't have a level 1 spell or level 4 spell, level 6 spell, and so on. You still have to learn. You still have to spend points to learn those quote-unquote empty ranks. So if you had 2 ranks in Shield Mastery, you would know Shield, but you wouldn't know Blur because you would need 3 ranks to know Blur. Yep. Okay, spells with an F are force spells. They directly apply a magic force to an object or being. Unwilling targets get a resistance roll. Generally, objects don't get a resistance roll. Usually, it's just beings that get a resistance roll. So D are defensive spells, and they are specifically for for that. Information spells, detecting spells, discovering illusions, tactile illusions, utility spells. So any U, H, or D type spells require the target to be willing. Any spells with a small d are going to be directed spells. They have to actually be, they're rolled basically just like an attack. You've got a directed spell skill for each one of the spells that you're going to cast. So you would have directed spell shock bolt 1 and make it an attack skill. These are all the definitions. Oh, here we go. Here's the key. Okay, so a D is a defensive spell. Right here under the type column. D is a defensive spell, and it allows the caster to defend himself in some way. E is an elemental attack spell. These are spells that create or use one of the physical elements to attack the target. The elemental material is real, so projected light creates a real lighted bolt, for example. It's not necessarily attack is kind of a iffy word. It's not necessarily an actual attack. So for example, projected light just creates essentially a magic flashlight. So there's no real actual attack there, but if you look at light 1, you can cast light on a target, and if the target wants to resist having the light on them, then they have to make a resistance roll. If they succeeded the resistance roll, the light stays where it was. If they don't, the light sticks to them, right? And you'll notice that these spell lists do often, I think all the time, go all the way up to 50. There might be 1 or 2 exceptions. So yes, you can get a huge number of spells. An elemental attack. If it's got an F, it's a force spell. And that involves the manipulation of energy. I believe I might have an F on Fire Law. Yes, okay. So Fire Law, Boiling Liquid, is a type F spell. And if there's an H under the type, it's a healing spell. If there's an I, it's an information spell. A P is a phantasm or an illusion, and a U is a utility spells. And utility spells don't generally affect anyone or anything but the target. Some spell codes have some spells have special codes. Really, the one that you want to look is going to be the most important for you. I figured Shock Bolt would be an instantaneous spell. Weird. Okay. One that's going to be the most important to you is the asterisk. These are instantaneous spells. They don't take any preparation to cast. You decide you're going to cast them. It takes a certain percentage of your action. Boom, you get the spell cast. The other types ones without the asterisk, you have to spend a number of rounds preparing the spell. And the number of rounds that you have to spend preparing it, it varies based off your level versus the spell level. I am also using an option that allows you to cast a spell faster at an upgraded extraordinary spell failure, which I'll explain extraordinary spell failure in a bit. Basically, it means you're going to cast it a lot more. Instead of taking all the preparation and channeling everything through properly, you're going to spend a lot of, you're going to cast it a lot faster, but it might backlash and hurt you. There's also these spells that have dots. I can't think of one off the top of my head. But those spells don't require power points. I'll get into power points in a moment. Double asterisk, a lot of those are for the alchemist type stuff. Subconscious spell, you don't have to be awake for it. Mental spell, it affects target's mind. The small d, like I said before, is a directed spell. So you have to use the directed spell skills in order to attack with it. Ball is an area attack spell. You can't do a directed spell skill in those, but they do affect an entire area. And then for under duration, 10 minutes per level, 1 minute per level. Those are pretty self-explanatory. Your first level character, they last 1 minute. A permanent spell, there are a few spells that just don't go away ever. Variable, it's going to depend on the nature of the spell cast, and you can look down here in the spell descriptions, and yes, the spell descriptions are short. They pretty much just tell you what the spell does, and boom, you're done. It doesn't go into a lot of detail. Time per level, time per number of failure. Has to do with modified resistance rolls. Sometimes a spell will, if you cast it, it'll last for a certain amount of time, but the target can make a resistance roll to make it last less amount of time. I've got the duration. Now for range, again, a lot of it's pretty self-explanatory. If there's a range here, 10 feet, 1 foot, 100 foot, distance per level for spells that care about that. Okay. So now you know how a spell looks. So let's look at Shock Bolt. So you would cast Shock Bolt. You would have to spend a certain number of rounds to prepare it. It hits one target within 100 feet range. It's an elemental spell, and it's a directed spell, so you would roll, for example, I would roll Shock Bolt 1 to attack with said spell. Now, excuse me. Okay, so for spells, you have to spend a number of power points equal to the spell's level in order to cast it. So if you're casting Shock Bolt 1, you have to spend 2 power points. Now, I am using an option. Normally, you can only cast a spell that's equal to your level. I am using an optional rule, and this is one of the good optional rules, I believe, in my opinion, that you can cast any spell that you know as long as you are going to be able to spend the power points and you're willing to take the upgraded extraordinary spell failure. What's extraordinary spell failure? Well, extraordinary spell failure is a number that if you roll it, and when you roll these are percentiles, just like everything else in the game, pretty much. When you roll it, I'm looking for it here on the, here we go, extraordinary spell failure. If you, this is actually the one I wanted. Oh, no, makes a table and charts. I got it. Okay, anyway, sorry. Extraordinary spell failure. If you roll an unmodified roll equal to or less than the unmodified spell, extraordinary spell failure number, which for all spells at its base is a 0-1 and a 0 or a 0-2, I believe. Let me see. Extraordinary, yeah, a 0-1 or a 0-2 unmodified for pretty much every spell. If you roll a 0-1 or a 0-2, your spell just goes off the rails. Doesn't matter, you know, anything else. Now, that's just your base. That is just the base extraordinary spell failure. It can never be dropped below a 0-1 or a 0-2, but it can go up. So I do have a couple of options I'm using. Known spells gives us an ESF bonus. I'm not using that one, sorry. Spellmaster ranks give an ESF bonus. You'll notice that there is a spell mastery skill, and it has to be for each spell. So spell mastery, shock bolt 1. I could reduce my ESF by 10 points. That'll be important because I'm using the overcasting spells option as well, and that is what allows you to cast spells as long as you know them. And you have the power points available. Now, you'll want to look at this because the so say you're casting a first level or a second level spell, and that's not what I'm looking for. Overcasting. Huh, maybe it is. Okay, so let's say you're casting a second level spell. Your first level character, you're casting Shield, let's say. Well, the spell level's 2. Your caster level's 1. That's a difference of 1. So you've got a 20 extraordinary spell modifier added on top of everything else. So you've really got at least a 21 to 22. You can also choose to that's not the option I was going to use. You can cast an armor if you're willing to risk more ESF. As you'll notice, channeling users they are much better off in this regard. They can go all the way up to armor type 12, which is one of the chainmails. Whereas Essence characters can only cast in clothing, basically. Clothing or robes. Mentalism doesn't care about armor. That's one of the bonuses of Mentalism. Mentalism does care about helmets. So a helmet is really going to fuck a mentalist up if it's metal. I'm not worried about prohibited equipment. Blah. Weight limits, nah. ESF for casting with no free hand. Yeah, I mean, that should not come up very often. But yeah, so, basically, the big thing you got to worry about is the ESF modifier for overcasting. You can pretty safely, if you're a first level character, you can pretty safely cast a first level spell. Because then you've just got the base 0-1 to 0-2. If you jump up and cast a second level spell, well, it's going to cost you 2 power points instead of 1 power point. And that's going to cause you to have a higher ESF. And there's not a whole lot of ways to reduce ESF, except, okay, for example, Makan here, let's say she was casting Shock Bolt, right? Where did Shock Bolt go? Let's say she's casting Shock Bolt. Well, Shock Bolt is a level 2 spell. So she's going to overcast to cast it. So then she has a plus 20 to her ESF, which brings her to a 21 to a 22. But because she's got spell mastery, in Shock Bolt 1, that's going to drop it by 10, which brings her down to an 11 or 12. So that's nice. Okay, preparation for a spell. Unless it's an instantaneous spell, a spell takes a number of rounds to prepare. And this is basically you're gathering the energy up to cast it, preparing to cast a spell. There's a 90%. It takes up 90% of your action for the round, so you can't move very far when you're doing it, and so on. And the way that I'm handling that, where is it? Time required to cast a spell. There's an option for it. Taking extra time. Here we go. No, that's not what I want. Notes, options used. Preparation time for spellcasting. Here we go. Under this option, which I'm going to use, if you just want to cast a spell instantaneously, you've got a minus 30 to the actual spell casting roll itself. It's not to the ESF. So a minus 30 and minus 15 if you spend minus 15 for one round. If you spend 2 rounds to prepare the spell, then you've got a plus 0. And this is for all spells. So we're kind of taking the spell level out of this equation with this. It's for all spells except instantaneous spells, obviously. And then if you want to spend 3 rounds casting a spell, you get a plus 10 to your spell casting roll. And if you want to spend 4 rounds preparing a spell, you get a plus 20. And that's just gives you a chance to cast it without the basic, without boosting your extraordinary spell failure up through the roof really fast. But it also makes it so that all spells, except instantaneous spells, regardless of level, also gain penalties or bonuses if you don't spend rounds preparing. So make sure you remember that, and I'll help everybody out that's playing in my group, of course, obviously, on all that. Okay. That's extraordinary spell failure and spell casting time. PowerPoints. I will want to point something out to you guys that are playing spell casters. Let's see what group does. Here we go. There are some incredibly important. This is not a moving maneuver. Sorry, I have to fix this real quick. Okay. So there are a few very important skills for you because I am using the PowerPoint development option for skill for PowerPoints. It's not on here for some odd reason. Oh, PowerPoint development. PowerPoint development is going to be very important because the more ranks you have in PowerPoint development, the more PowerPoint you have, which means the more spells you can cast before you have to rest. Those are important. If you've got, these are for, the spell lists. How high up have you learned it? 2 ranks in Fire Law, 2 levels in Light Law, 1 level in Shield Mastery. Which, yes, I know, makes Shield Mastery kind of useless for this character, but I needed to get rid of some points somehow, and I wanted to start working on Shield Mastery. PowerPoint development, super useful, super important for spellcasters. Make sure you take some PowerPoint developments, because even with 4 ranks in PowerPoint developments and a ×2 PowerPoint modifier or multiplier, I've only got 8 PowerPoints at level 1. And that's going to go quick. It's going to go quicker than you think. It might. Then if you've got directed spells, for example, Shock Bolt is a directed spell, so it's got the little D down there. Then you want a specific skill for each one of those. If you want Spell Mastery in a spell, which lets you do things like ignore some of the extraordinary spell failure, you can never ignore the base 01, 02. But it allows you to do some other things as well. Spell Mastery is important as well if you're going to go with that route, because you're going to want to have Spell Mastery so that it can help manipulate the spells a little bit better for you. Those are very important skills to take. Also, if you can swing it, you will want a PowerPoint multiplier item. There's what a PowerPoint multiplier item does is it increases the number of PowerPoints that you get by the multiplier. So normally I've got 4 ranks in PowerPoint development, so I've got 4 PowerPoints, right, at level 1. But I've got the ×2 multiplier, so I've got a maximum of 8 PowerPoints. So I doubled my PowerPoints because ×2 multiplier, duh, that makes sense, right? Okay. The other type of fun item for spellcasting is a spell adder. What is a spell adder, you might ask? These are also cool. Personally, I prefer PowerPoint multipliers. Spell adders are another option, though. What a spell adder does is it allows you to cast a certain number of spells per day, no PowerPoint cost. Doesn't matter the level of the spell, so spell adders are really powerful in that regard. They don't really have a bad downside. So example, if you have a spell adder of +1, you can cast 1 spell that you know anytime per day, no PowerPoint cost. You still have to deal with all the other things like preparation and all that, but it essentially gives you free spell slots. So, PowerPoint, a spell adder +1 gives you 1, a spell adder +2 gives you 2 spells per day you can do, and so on. So those are important, right? Again, like I said, I prefer PowerPoint multipliers because it gives me a little bit more flexibility. There is no reason that you can't take a PowerPoint multiplier and a spell adder. There's just this sheet for some reason doesn't have a slot for both. And really and truly, you don't need it for this. You just know you've got a PowerPoint multiplier, or not a PowerPoint, spell adder. Oh, either way you want to do it, that's a good way to get so that you can cast more spells. Right? I know this is a lot, and we'll go through it all when we're doing character creation and during play. Don't worry too much about it. Okay, so now you know how to read your spell list. You know what spells you can cast. You know what skills you're probably going to need. You know what you got to do to cast the spells. You've learned about extraordinary spell failure. And extraordinary spell failure, by the way, is also on a chart, like almost everything else in Rolemaster. Yeah, it's on the chart. That's the core answer for just about everything. Almost everything in Rolemaster is on a chart, which is why some people call it Chartmaster. It's both a good and a bad thing. But anywho, all right. So now you know all of that, right? How do you cast a spell? Well, then let's get into that. There are. I'm gonna have to load up an encounter. I'm gonna do new encounter. And I'm gonna add her to the encounter. I don't need Bob Fighter. So we're gonna add Makan. Okay. All right. So how do you cast a spell? Well, there's 3 different types of spells that we've talked about before. Non-attack spells, you just cast with a simple 1d100 roll plus +1 for your level, or +1 per level. These are base casting rolls, and as you can see on here, if the base casting roll is 3 to 100, the spell succeeds. If the base casting roll is 0, 1 to 0, 2, the spell fails. If the spell fails, then we make a base cast high open-ended rolls and add the number of PowerPoints to spell failure roll to apply to the non-attack section of the spell failure table. It's hard to fail a non-attack base casting roll because all you've got to do is get a total of 3 or higher, and that spell is cast. Okay. So how about an example? Do I have any? Let's see. No. 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 All of those are going to require a different type of roll. Okay. But usually like a healing roll might be, but anything with an F, if it's an F or an H, I don't think it counts. But okay, fine. So we'll do it this way. Let's say I'm casting a spell that is a basic spell that requires a spell casting roll, but just a base casting roll. I would add my level, which is 1 right now, to a 1d100 roll. Roll it. I got a 26. The spell is cast successfully. Boom. That's it. That's all there is for a base casting roll. Of course, those are non-attack spells and spells that don't really manipulate anything, and so those aren't really the fun spells. They're useful. Don't get me wrong, but they're not real fun. They don't actually do anything. Okay. Well, how about something that does something? Okay, how about a base attack spell? Attack is a weird word. I probably would have called it something else because not all of these are base attack spells. Some of them are, they just, manipulate things. So, for a base attack spell, you make a base attack roll, and I will put the base attack spell roll, or it's also called the BAR. I will put the base attack spell on everybody's sheet as a skill, which means you can access it on the combat tracker. It doesn't really have an offensive bonus. But when you roll, if you roll under your extraordinary spell failure, which is normally a 0-1 or 0-2, that's without any modifications, by the way, then the spell goes really, really bad. If you roll a 96 or 100, the spell automatically succeeds and has an immediate effect. Goes really, really good. Right? And then there are modifications, of course. There's the caster level. I need to check and see if this... I didn't add my caster level. Okay. Oh, I need to clear all those. Okay. I'll explain this in a moment. Okay. We're not going to worry about that right now. Okay. What was I saying? Okay, so you would roll it. You would add your level. Right. I did that wrong. You would add your level. I would add your level as a modifier, and you would roll it. Okay, so a 12 comes up, right? Oh, so what does a 12 mean? Well, a 12 gives you this fun little resistance roll modifier table, or resistance roll table. Okay. Apparently I was targeting Bob Fighter for some odd reason, but whatever. I shouldn't be targeting anybody. Okay, anywho. So at the resistance roll table, the way that you read this is the attacker's level is at the top, and the defender's level is on the left. So if it's a first level attack or a first level spell against a first level target, they need to get a 50 in order to successfully resist this spell. And it goes up and down. So if you're like a 9th level caster and you're targeting a first level character, they need an 82. And that's just a 1d100 plus the appropriate modifiers. And you click apply. There's no target result for that, and so then you would come over to your character, and you would go to the main tab. This is an essence, so you would roll an essence Resistance roll, you need a 50 or higher with all the bonuses. A 27, you failed. The spell attacks you, or the spell affects you. A lot of these that make base attack rolls are against objects and stuff. For example, I've got Boil Water, which is a force spell, so it would need or Boil Liquid. Water is not usually going to be alive, so it's usually not going to resist. A good example might be from Light Law. Light 1, there we go. Light 1. So if the resistance roll succeeds, the area of effect is centered on the point where they're standing, but won't move with them. So you still get the light cast, it just doesn't stick with them. If the target fails the resistance roll, then the effect sticks to the target, and they're lit up. And so they're lit up, and they walk around, and they're all shiny and stuff, right? For 10 minutes per level. Okay, and there's modifications, modifiers. If you roll and the result comes up with an F, which only comes up on a 0, 1, or 0, 2, the spell's failed, and you have to make a spell failure roll. Target column. Oh, I did that all, the whole section all wrong. Ignore what I said. Okay, so I roll a 31. Bob's a first level character. He's got a -11 to his resistance roll. Then he makes his resistance roll. But don't worry too much about that. We'll get it all straightened out in game. Just know that that's kind of the way that works. Okay, let's see what happened. Okay, let's start this again because it did something funky. I don't know what it did. Okay, let's go back. So we're going to cast Light 1 on Bob, we'll say. Let me put Bob into the encounter table. For my players, don't worry, you're not going to have all these windows up. I'll have these windows up, but you won't have these windows up. Okay, so we'll put Bob in there. And we're going to target Bob. We're going to target Bob with a base attack spell of Light 1. I want to see if I can make him glow, right? Okay, there we go. It did apply that. Reset. Okay. So I'm going to make a base attack spell. I'm going to try to make Bob glow. Bob is not willing for whatever reason. I rolled a 1. That's great. A 1 is a failure. I'm not in metal armor, which is good, I guess. So I've got my failure table that comes up. This is what happens when you fail your extraordinary spell failure roll. I make a roll on it. It's only a 9. So that's not too awful. So 9 is I lose concentration. The spell is lost, but not the points. So I fail to cast the spell, but I don't lose the power points. So that's cool. Let's say next round I'm going to try it again, or next time I cast I'm going to try it again on Bob. This time I get a 99. And a 99 is a -100 to Bob's resistance roll. So -100 to Bob's resistance roll. What does Bob resist? Or what does Bob roll when he resists? Let's find out. So this is essence. I got a +5 or -5. So let's see. Oh, damn, Bob. Bob rolled. Bob rolled 105, but he got a 78. So we resolve this. It's against level 1. Bob got us a 78. That's not pulling up the right one. I'm not sure why. Bob just needed a 50 to succeed. Bob succeeds. He doesn't glow. He needs 78. Okay, I see what it's doing now. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. So Bob got a 78. He resisted. Let's see if we can maybe roll one without such an extreme result. 56. Okay, excellent. Base attack versus means he's got a -5. So we want to apply that. Now Bob makes his essence resistance roll. I need a total of a 50. I've got a -5. I've got another -5 because I've got a -5 for my essence. I roll it. I get a total of 48. I failed by 2, as you can see here. So that means now Bob is glowing and covered in light. Okay. Normally you don't roll 0, 1 and then a 96 and then yeah. Okay. Well, that was a rather long way around, but that's a base attack spell. But what if Makai wants to hit Bob with a shock bolt? Aha, now things get a little bit more interesting. This is an attack spell. It sounded a lot like physical attacks. Let's reset this. Okay, sounded a lot like attacks. You would choose your offensive bonus or defensive bonus, etc. Let me just clear Bob's effects. Right. Okay. So Makai is going to spend the time and decides to cast Shock Bolt 1. She has chosen, perhaps unwisely, to not apply any parry to her defense. If she had applied parry to her defense, let's say 10 points, and she would interesting. I'll have to double check and make sure that direct that doesn't subtract from that. But anyway, so she's going to cast Shock Bolt at Bob. And let's see what we got. Bob's got pretty good armor, so this may not do a whole heck of a lot. 46. Which is a 64 total. Let's resolve it. Okay. There's Bob's defensive bonus. There's my defensive bonus, my offensive bonus. Good armor type 13. It doesn't do anything to him. Let's try again. 67. Let's resolve it. So this time it would do 4 points damage to him. Let's see if I can get one that gives me a crit. I could cheat. Oh no, a 0, 1. That's bad. Alright, now I gotta roll. So I spent 2 power points. Oh. Ow. Oh, I think that was only supposed to be a high open-ended. Sorry. Let's try that again. Jesus Christ. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, so I got a 75. So what's a 75? Subconscious fear causes the caster to cast an ineffectual spell, and I'm stunned for 1 round. Like with the combat, it will apply all of that info here. So I'll be stunned for a round. Come back. Oh, yeah, I guess I've got to delete that. Duration 0. I've got to delete that now. Okay. Let's try again. I'm trying to get a crit on Bob. 61s might give me a crit. Nope. Tell you what, I'm going to cheat because I can do that. And I'm going to say that I got a 85 on the roll. That gives me an 8 points of damage. So I could click apply to apply that damage. Then I right click, choose A for the crit, make a 1d100 roll for the crit. We get an 82. 82A, back blast, foe is stunned and unable to parry for 2 rounds plus 12 hits. We apply that. You'll see that Bob is messed up for 2 rounds. He takes another 20 hits. He's almost dead. Okay. So you know how to spend your power points. Now, how do you regain your power points? Ha ha ha. Well, you regain power points by resting. Surprise. On the combat tracker, I can choose rest. And it's going to give us different options: 1 hour, 2 hour, 4 hours, 8 hours, so on. Oh, by the way, you do have to manually track how many power points you spent on your sheet. So let's go back to my kind of sheet. And let's say I've used 4 power points, right? That's going to show that I've got 4 remaining. This is for spell adders. We haven't used any spell adders. Not that we have any to use, but whatever. So we want to rest. If we kind of hover over and get some tool tips here, we'll see if you rest for an hour, you regain 1 hit. 2 hours, 2 hits. We're not worrying too much about exhaustion, by the way. 4 hours, 4 hits. 8 hours, 8 hits and all your PP power points. 12 hours, 12 hits and all your power points. 24 hours, or I can remove everything. So if we rest, and you'll watch this number, because if we rest for 8 hours, boom, not only does it heal the damage like it did on Bob, it also got rid of the used power points, so they are back in effect. Okay, that's spellcasting. I know it might seem like a lot, but once we get in play, it's not gonna be terrible, horrible, awful, complicated. And I'll spend the first few sessions walking everybody through it as needed. And I think that is it for combat, so I'll talk to you guys later.